Hi, I'm Richard Vague with Tychos. Today, at the request of a viewer, we're delving into the topic of wage growth, specifically addressing the claim that real wages in the United States have been stagnant for the past 50 years. We'll start by examining data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the wage survey that is at the heart of the claim that real wages have been stagnant. This data, derived from a survey of production workers, shows average weekly wages. When these wages are adjusted for consumer prices, the stagnation is clear. Wages went down from the 1960s to the 1990s and have climbed since, but today in real terms, wages are no higher than they were 50 years ago. However, there are two important considerations to bear in mind when interpreting the data. First, the surveys focus on low wage earners introduces a bias skewing the average wage figures. This becomes apparent when comparing with other wage measures, which we will explore further. Second, the conventional method for adjusting wages for price fluctuations using the Consumer Price Index was especially susceptible to idiosyncratic fluctuations through the 1970s. This stemmed from rapidly rising housing prices along with asset-based approach to measuring the cost of shelter. For perspective beyond this BLS data series, we can turn to data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, which encompasses wages from all workers. According to BEA data, there has been a more noticeable real wage growth of 44% from 1984 to 2023, in stark contrast to the 13% growth reported by the BLS data. The implication of the difference between the BLS and BEA data is that the lower wage group has borne the brunt of the slow wage growth problem. Data from the CBO corroborates this notion. According to the CBO, from 1979 to 2020, real wages increased by 17%. This increase, however, was significantly skewed towards the top 20% of income earners, who saw their wages grow by a staggering 54%. In stark contrast, the bottom 80% of workers experienced a 7% decline in their wages. Furthermore, it's important to compare wage growth to the growth of the overall economy, or GDP. And real GDP, adjusted for workforce size, has grown at 79% since 1984, a much quicker pace than real wages. That means that economic growth over the past decades has not translated fully into workers' wages and their consequent purchasing power. In full disclosure, we would note one technical issue regarding the price index used to convert wages and GDP into real terms. To this point, we've been adjusting wages by applying the CPI index, which is the common approach and is understandable, as CPI represents the actual spending power on consumer goods purchased by individuals. But what happens if we adjust wages by the Personal Consumption Expenditure, or PCE index, the same price index used to arrive at real GDP? Here we see that if we were to use the same price deflator for wages as we do GDP, the growth rates are more closely aligned. Real wages by this measure have grown at a rate of 70% since 1984, closer to the pace of GDP at 79%, which would mean that while still an issue, the wage issue is somewhat less pronounced than the CPI index would suggest. To round out our understanding of household income, it's important to note that total personal income is a lot higher than wages alone, since it includes investment returns, government benefits, retirement payouts, and the like. As of 2023, total wages considered alone accounted for only 52% of GDP, whereas total personal income, including these other items, stood at 84% of GDP. And the lion's share of these other types of income go to the wealthiest. So this too points to growing income inequality. That's it for this week. Thanks.